All right. And this again, I say, all right. How y'all feeling? Good to see you. We're live on YouTube. People of Rockfin, we are live. We're live on Callin. What up? Glad to see y'all here. It's Christmas Eve. Had to think about that for a second. What day is it? All right, all right, all right. Yep. How you doing, people? Human Love Solidarity says once every human is treated with dignity, priorities can be made. Sure. How y'all doing today? How's everybody faring? Is everyone experiencing the crappy weather? And it just gets warmer in LA. This is peak weather whiplash here because everybody else is like -2. And in Los Angeles it is straight up 80 degrees outside. It's a straight up beautiful day in LA, and I feel horrific for even saying that because everybody else is like, Jesus Christ, this sucks. It is cold. We are close to death, right? If you walk outside for a little while. 6 Celsius in Vancouver. Yeah, it's just weirdness, but 14 degrees, it's a heat wave, says unapologetic vegan. Yeah, I know a lot of people are experiencing a very white winter, a very white Christmas, a very cold Christmas. It's all seasonally correct everywhere else. Judy Truitt says it's a nice day here in southwest New Mexico. Kameshwari says you're in Tiburon right now. Warm. People on both ends of the spectrum. All right. TCR says we went from smoky and 88 degrees to winter in 1 week in mid-October. Max RJ says it seems like Hoover Dam is still experiencing drought. They won't allow anyone to film there without a permit. Yeah, you know, when things start looking bad, just don't allow people to see the things or talk about the things. That seems to be the way it's going right now. That sounds about right. Choir Boy says my water tried to freeze up on me a week ago, got -15. All right. Well, it's Christmas Eve. We're all here. We're hanging out. I don't know. We may do an hour. We may do shorter than an hour. I don't know. I'm going to talk about some things. I want to mainly talk about this article that Poppy sent me that a few people have been talking about. Quite a few people on Twitter have been talking about. But we're going to get there. I'm not there yet. We're going to get there. We're going to talk about a couple of other things first. Oh, what Poppy sent me was something about slavery mined cobalt from the Congo. So we're going to talk about the impact of, the cost of the human cost and the ecological cost of our current society, which we all understand is pretty large. First of all, though, breaking Monsanto just lost a massive $82 million case in Seattle after a jury found it poisoned teachers and children in school. Monsanto has now lost 5 of 6 trials on the same issue and owes close to $1 billion. We can chalk that up as good news, but what I want to know is why Monsanto got Monsanto poisoned people, was guilty of poisoning people, and got an $82 million verdict. And Alex Jones apparently said things that were not true. And he got fined for like $1 billion, something close to that. Alex Jones didn't even take anybody out in the story he was talking about. He was just apparently giving people wrong information about it. And I'm not even going to debate that right now, but I'm just saying it's kind of like if you tell, it's kind of like Julian Assange, right? Telling the truth about war is way worse than the actual war crimes committed, right? So the war crime, is anybody getting taken to task for those war crimes? Or do they get a slap on the wrist? Do they get don't do that? Or did somebody who told the truth about it get put in prison for, years and years and years and may never get out? That's the kind of world we live in now. I'm not even agreeing with Alex Jones. I'm just saying the judgment against him was something like close to $1 billion. Anyways, it seems a little bit, right, a little weird. And yet these companies that poison people, right, they get fined for it. They make so much money. It's just the cost of doing business, right? They expect to get fined. They've calculated that cost into the product. Right? We're going to put this thing out and we might end up poisoning people or killing people. Who knows? And if we get sued for it, it's cool because we already made, billions and billions and billions of dollars in profit. So if we lose, a couple mil here, a couple mil there, it's just like a marketing budget, right? But I guess, it's good that these companies are getting taken to task, at least sometimes, once in a while, when they should be nationalized, broken up, scattered to the wind, not allowed to exist, sued and taxed and legislated out of existence. That's actually what should be happening to these companies. They shouldn't be allowed to exist. That's my personal opinion. But our entire society actually runs on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more things that require the use of products made by companies that shouldn't be allowed to exist, right? They shouldn't be allowed to operate, given their business models. That's a lot of industrial civilization and or capitalism. Relies on things. And we can just start with oil. Pretty much everything relies on oil. Even the most, greenest and cleanest and beautiful things often need to be shipped, right? Or you got to drive to go get the things. What does that take? Oil. So everything has some modicum of oil in it. And should the oil companies be allowed to exist? Or should they even be operating at the moment? No, of course not. Fossil fuel is life. Well, it is for now. Let's move on to this next story. Oh, well, here's more. I think we covered this lawsuit a day or two ago. That was my nose. Or maybe this is a 1969 oil industry study said CO2 levels would reach 370 parts per million by the year 2000. The actual reading was 369.71, so they were right on the dot, pretty much. Though long forgotten, the research was recently unearthed and is now playing a key role in climate lawsuits against oil majors. And it should be. So they know that the upshot of this is that they knew. They did these studies. They their own research showed them where it was going and how it was going to play out, and then they said, "Well, that'll be bad for business." Anyways, one of the papers says there seems to be no doubt that the potential damage to our environment could be severe. They knew this, and they did the studies. The Club of Rome did the studies. They all knew. They all did the studies, and have all figured it out. All knew, and then decided to go. Well, business must go on. And we all took part of it. It's not, I know we could have been better educated and informed, sure. But we are all collectively culpable as humans in this destruction. It's not the geoengineers, it's not the government, it's not the rich people, it's not the wealthy, it's not those people over there, it's not these people over here. Collectively, the human species messed it up a bit. We're all culpable to some degree. Sorry, there's no getting off the hook on this one. Unless you live in a rainforest somewhere and are part of an indigenous tribe. Anyways, as a result of the fossil fuel industry's lies and deceit, the state had paid billions of dollars to clean up climate change-induced disasters like Superstorm Sandy to fortify the New Jersey shore from future storms and to protect its people, business, infrastructure, and natural resources from a myriad of other climate change hazards. It's time to halt this deceptive conduct and place responsibility for remedying its effects on defendants where it belongs, rather than the taxpayers of New Jersey. They're just talking about who's cleaning up what. Anyways, this is a rather long article, which would be great to read if you all have time to read it. It's at 360.yale, e360.yale.edu. But we all know that, particular companies have bad labor practices or bad business models, or they're doing damage to the earth. And many of us go, what are you going to do? Kameshwari Kate, it's not, I'm not saying, well, I don't know if are you joking? I can't tell whether you're joking. We all played a part in this, including me. That's what I'm saying. We've all had a hand in it. to certain degrees, right? Some people much less, right? Some people are, living in, what do you call those things? Living in huts. Oh, satire. Thank you, Kameshwari Kate. To some degree, we've all. I was nervously clicking my mouse on my computer and I messed it up. I figured you were joking, but we're all complicit in this. Did anybody watch Sam's interview on Great White? Is it Great White Underbelly? Soft White Underbelly. Did anybody watch that one? It's pretty good. G. Demarest, I caused more destruction than you know. Human Love says this comet has a carbon footprint. Indeed. Yeah, it was pretty good. Is Sam, did Sam say anything new? Not at all. But maybe to the people who have never heard this message, this particular realization, to a lot of people it might be new. It was good. It was good. G. Demarest, Sam Cedar. That's funny. That is funny. Yeah, we've all mucked it up, and why I brought up Sam's interview is because he basically said as much. We've all mucked it up. We, the human collective, have mucked it up. It's not like humans are bad and we wish somebody would come and take them away, or we want to do away with. That's not what anybody is saying, and that's not what he is saying. It's just a realization that humans collectively have messed it all up. You're making Kameshwari, you're making black bean enchiladas. Ooh. Guess what I'm going to do today? If we're talking about food, I'm going to make some tamales. What flavor tamales? I think I'm going to make. I made sweet potato tamales a few years ago, and they were super good. So I think I'm going to do the same. And maybe some chili and cheese, maybe some bean and cheese. That's my plan. Gene says, good news. Russell Brand had a video that said by 2045 sperm count medium will be 0. Strawberry tamales, G. Demarest. Now, the thing about the sweet potato tamales is that it's kind of a... I don't really like the sweet tamales that people make, but the sweet potato tamales are a little bit slightly sweet, but also it's like a mix of sweet and savory. It's pretty good. All right. What else are we talking about today? Oh, we've got a call from Fantomas. Fantomas, how you doing?
Okay. You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I find it interesting when we talk about things and issues of the world that people shrug off so many things. I'm in Maine, and right now in Maine we don't have any snow. So
Really?
I mean, you think about that for a second, Kev. The fact that we are so inundated with so much deception, when the fact that the term global warming has warped our heads so much. When you're in the middle of climate change and stuff like this, and the fact that people were drumming up in their heads, the winter storm is coming, the winter storm is coming. Right. I see green grass outside my door.
And that is, that's way wrong, right? That is super wrong.
Right. It melted so fucking fast, Kev.
So what's the temperature where you're at? Are you in the negatives, or are you?
I'd have to check on it. It's probably not like the Midwest or in other. I mean, it's very wacky what's going on in terms of like the fact we can't have an open discussion about it because so many people get so upset with the fact that we may be harming the environment, which is really, really strange when you think about how many things people will go on and on about other people who are harming their world.
Right.
But when we would start talking about the environment, it's such a taboo subject.
Oh, sure. For sure. And people don't, for a multitude of reasons, but mainly because people don't want to. It's just, it's a bummer is what it is.
I mean, that's true. I mean, I had someone, the fact is that when you're dealing with the holiday season, it's a season of constant, of saturated commerce,
right?
disguised as holiday cheer.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have and then the next month, whatever distraction they want. So it's just distraction after distraction, and there's no time to talk about anything of substance, really. And then people try to play gotcha with these stupid words like global warming and whatever. They say, it's not. It's what's happening in your town. It's not flooded or whatever the case might be. It's crazy the fact that we still have to deal with all of this stuff, and we can't just summarize it in 5 minutes and 6 minutes. Yeah. Al Gore's not the be all to end all of
right.
environmental discussion.
Yep. Well, what I was also thinking about too, or what I've been thinking about a lot, is the saying about good times produces weak men create bad times create strong men, right? Or you could just say people. And we've had a lot of good time. We've had such a good time that people are really people are very weak, and it's unfortunate. And I know a lot of people, and people will be, what are you talking about? No, we're weak. We're too weak. We're too weak to notice what's wrong and do anything about it. We're too weak to take a stand. We're too weak to stop what we're doing. We're too weak. I'm including myself in that. We're too weak
Yeah.
to make a difference, to make a dent on what's going on. We're too weak to, give up our comfort and our freedom and our livelihood, to stop what's going on. We are weak. We are a weak ass culture. We're weak AF, and and it's unfortunate because we can't, we're not going to do anything until things get really bad, and then when things get really bad, everybody will go, oh, okay, but it's going to be pretty late by then.
I find it like, for example, I don't know if have you heard any of the news lately of the updates, what's happening in Texas with the grid system? Do they have any footage where the people are dealing with or anything like that? Have you seen any of that?
I don't know. I actually haven't heard much other than that there haven't been that widespread a power outage there. They seem to be faring okay. And I think the big cold snap has kind of moved through Texas a little bit. Yeah. It's hitting other places, but I was watching let me see. I'll find it. I think I can find it. Maybe. Somebody had like a time lapse of pretty sure I retweeted it. A time lapse of shoot, maybe not. A time lapse of the cold snap, but it went down south to Texas, but I don't think it. Oh crap! Did I miss the whole thing? I think I actually just lost it somewhere. Anyways, it moved kind of through Texas, and so maybe it's still cold there, but maybe not as cold. I don't know.
You see what BlackRock said with their announcement? They made a formal announcement.
Oh, that we're going to have a recession.
Yeah, we're headed for like the biggest recession. Or whatever.
Biggest recession of all time.
Rates.
Brought to you by BlackRock, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they might as well just be sponsoring it.
They say someone told me the other night. Oh, Kurt Metzger was on Jimmy Dore, and he said that the founder of BlackRock is the same guy that created the submortgage loans.
Right. And that's why I said brought to you by BlackRock. They own everything. They control everything. And then when we have the biggest recession of all time, they will buy everything up for pennies on that. They really will own everything. That will be the time when BlackRock moves in with all their capital. But what else did I just see on Jimmy? I was watching the same Jimmy Dore just
yeah.
Quite a few good studies in there. I mean, good stories in there. Sorry. Yeah, and then we're sending all the money to Ukraine. So there you go.
Well, I just wanted to touch on the whole thing with what was happening in Maine. I find it interesting the fact that nobody even shrugs the shoulder at this shit. Like,
it's wild though.
There should be snow on the ground in Maine.
There absolutely should be snow on the ground. There should not be green grass on the ground in Maine. Not right now.
Yeah.
No.
And here's the crazy thing. Kev. We had snow on the ground yesterday. And then all of a sudden the rain just washed everything away in an instant. And we'll probably have snow in another few weeks. But the fact that we go through these subsiding fluctuations is, to me, another sign.
Yep, and it's happening I am looking at whether the fact that everywhere in the country is experiencing this freezing weather. It's literally 80 degrees, probably warmer than 80 degrees in Southern California, which is nice and everything. But if you have too many of these extremes, right? Plants get confused. Plants don't know what to do. Plants that are winter plants that are planted in the ground, right? Lettuces and whatnot. If you have too many days of 80 degrees in the middle of December, all those things melt. Those plants can't grow, right? Those plants are affected by these weather extremes, so it's not. It's to the average person, they're like, "Oh, it's great! I love this weather." But you're like, yeah, um, maybe not
I
so
mean,
much.
and it's
If
funny
if no
because
snow in Maine, to a lot of people, it's probably like, hey, this is pretty cool, nice.
yeah, I know,
But no,
that's
that's
true.
not
People
supposed to
say
be
it's a freak.
happening, right? That's
They'll
not.
say it's like a freak incident or something, and they won't want to have a discussion of like how weird it is when you can go and walk when I can walk in the woods right now outside and go and say there's no snow in the woods. It's like what?
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that
that's
there's
wild.
no snow in the woods in late December, I don't know. That to me is like is more than wild, and the fact that nobody, and the fact that we live in such a propagandized world that in terms of just like in local news where nobody's talking about it is strange in itself.
Oh, and you can't even, in a lot of news cultures, you can't even bring this stuff up because
That's true. They'll just say it's a fluke.
it's yeah. Oh, what are you talking about, man? Like, okay.
Well, that's
Uh,
what I wanted to talk about. I'll let you get back to your show.
all
Happy
right.
holidays to you.
Happy holidays. Thanks, Fantomas.
All right, talk to you later. Bye.
Bye. All right. Denver Attaway says we don't perceive that we possess the leverage to change anything. Obvious institutional malfeasance in so many areas have made people numb and helpless to act, kind of like the shock tests on dogs that broke them to accept the random unprovoked punishment while the unbroken dogs got off the hot electric portion of the floor. Yeah, but we don't, it wasn't that long ago when people saw an issue that was going on, whatever it might be, inequality or bad treatment from the government or the powers that be. It wasn't that long ago when people were willing to go like, nah, no, no, man, no, I'm getting out there. We're doing something about this. We're going to change it. And we don't do that anymore. We just sit around and go like, man, this is bad. Gene, you have coffee beans? Oh, I want to grow coffee beans. I don't know if coffee beans grow very well in Southern California, but maybe soon they will. Maybe soon they will. How many coffee plants or trees do you have to grow to actually get enough coffee to drink some coffee? I don't know. I don't know that much about it. All right. Peter Dines. Well, quickly, let's check on the coffees here. A really great way to support the show is buymeacoffee.com. Buymeacoffee.com/Black Bear News. We have no coffees as of yet today, no Rockfin tips as of yet, but these are both really great ways to support the show. Also, Patreon is great. You know what? I actually haven't brought up the Black Bear News t-shirts in a long time. I don't even know if my link is in the thing. I think that my link is in the description box. But if it's not, I'll remind myself to put up my link for Black Bear News t-shirts. Because we haven't talked about t-shirts in a long time, but we have. If you want a Black Bear News t-shirt, I have them. I make them by hand. What's up, Joseph? How you doing? If it's not, I'll remind myself. Hello.
Hello?
Hey, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You're fading in and out. Uh-oh. I think we lost him. We did get a Rockfin tip from John House. Thank you for the Super Ray, John House. I appreciate you. Oh, we lost you, Joe. Sorry about that. I don't know if you come back in. Come back in.
I'm sorry, the app keeps bouncing me out.
Oh. Yeah, it can be weird sometimes.
It did a bunch of hocus pocus. I was wondering if we could talk, if your show would be interested, your listeners, in one topic of energy source. Like I listened to a long video of Sabine Hassenfeder about nuclear energy. And I thought that would be a great thing to do to educate people as to why nuclear specifically isn't effective, and then move on to another one at a different time. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Sure. We've had lots of talks about nuclear energy, over the years for sure. But yeah, totally.
For sure we have. But I thought, like, she did a video that was published today, and she's a proponent for nuclear energy.
Ah.
And she's a well-known physicist. So I thought,
why does she get to be for? Why does she get to be for nuclear energy?
Well, she's from Germany, and there are some really safe things about nuclear energy is from a certain perspective. Like if you compare its waste to actual harm done, they'll have lots and lots of stuff data-wise to show you how there's way more damage done to certain parts of the environment and human life from just electrical shocks from solar energy than nuclear power. And while that's true, it's also equally misleading in a lot of other ways. And she's smart enough to know to go back and look at data for how they acquire it, how they process it, and she'll have she does have a complete report-based itinerary of how much CO2 waste is produced in all of that. And it makes nuclear energy look very viable. And based on just CO2, it actually is. But that's misleading. And then we don't get to have the conversation with Sabina, but you and I and your audience and whoever you want to have could.
Well, you tell us why it's misleading.
Well, I could tell you all day, but just, one of the biggest reasons,
Cliff Notes.
I think that the most conversationally and educational thing to point at is nuclear energy produces vast quantities of hot vapor from its cooling process. And as long as we keep talking only about CO2 produced solar heat, then the whole conversation about all this heat produced from the pile, the waste, which is always hot, nuclear waste is not, it's not a dead thing.
Nope.
Half-life doesn't really mean anything. It has more to do with viability of profits. So the rate that it produces energy and breaks down is increasing exponentially, but the level of heat that it gives off is not reducing in the same way. So it sits there still hot.
Right. Well, did she get into what it takes to build a nuclear plant?
Not specifically, just the CO2 for the materials in building the plant. And again, it makes it not look so out of range.
Right. It's a lot of externalized, costs there. Just like, renewable energy. They like to externalize the costs so that it looks like there's nothing that it doesn't take much to get these things going, but it does, right?
Which to me, I always question how sinister is it that they're pointing at just CO2, because it makes all that other stuff magically go away under the carpet. And if someone like Sabine Hassenfeder isn't percolated enough in her thought process to uncover that, then you got to think that the average person isn't going to be by any means.
Yeah. There's a lot of people out there that are, big nuke proponents. We had somebody following the show that was a big nuke proponent who would always call in and go, "What about nuclear? What about nuclear? Nuclear's not so bad. They're lying to you about nuclear, blah blah blah," right? And I'd be like, I don't know about that, right? Like
Right.
nuclear power, nuclear waste isn't that bad, or radiation isn't that bad. And look at Fukushima, and everybody's all back to normal there. And look at Chernobyl, and it's all, that green zone is great. And I'm like, that green zone's great because we're not there. That's why it's great. I mean, yeah, you could. There are differing, I guess, readings on like how much radiation is actually in that no-go zone.
And no one really knows.
Nobody really knows. Nobody knows what you're talking about, things that can't be calculated, like pardon the use of the word fallout, the multi-generational fallout from that.
That's exactly right.
Right. And so, people are saying, oh, there's no issues. And then, like, are you sure about that? I don't know. I find it to be those kinds of arguments to be like to showcase the recklessness of science. Right.
So
to show a lot of charts and graphs and and like, look, it's totally safe, right? Come on, kids, come on. Average housewife of America, you can use you want to use these products and they're safe for your family. And then 20 or 30 years later, they're like, okay, not so safe. And now there's lawsuits and Monsanto's getting sued for $82 million. And, but nobody talks about that one, right? Nobody's
not in the open.
No.
Well, and in Sabina's defense, she would say all the dangers as well of nuclear.
Yeah. But it's like, Osama constantly brings up, where do you store it? How do you store the waste? Where does it go?
Right.
And there's no safe way to do that. Not yet, really. Everybody just passes nuclear waste around like a big hot football. And
to me, it's the worst.
It's
but for reasons that I can't get my foot in the door with in a discussion.
Yeah, so that's something that they leave out all the time. That's very conveniently left out. And then there's the thing about these nuclear plants have a limited, lifespan, right? A lot of them are being closed down because they have leaks or they're faulty, there are also a lot of nuclear plants having their licenses be renewed, right? They have a lifespan of like 20 or 30 years, and then they get to the 20 or 30 years, and then they're like, well, if we just tinker around and make a couple of upgrades, we can renew your license for another 20 or 30 years, pretty much guaranteeing that these plants are going to, again, have some kind of leak or, break down in the future, right? They're just like, they don't know because it's uncharted territory.
Right. I have one of my, not a friend, acquaintance of mine is a nuclear PhD, nuclear physicist working in a waste portion of a nuclear plant. And his opinion is, and again, I'm not going to name him, but he's basically of the opinion, if you can't turn it off, don't turn it on. Mm-hmm. And he works there.
Right.
And that's, in the long run, we have no way of dealing with what we do when we turn one of those things on. We just don't. And nobody looks at the heat. And if you're going to talk about global warming, it seems fairly reasonable to start with heat.
Mm-hmm.
And heat produced by civilization is a lot greater than the amount of CO2 we put out.
Right. Right. Well, and then somebody in the chat, or several people in the chat, are bringing up the fact that, now major rivers are drying up. They every single year they have to close down nuclear plants in France and Germany because cooling problems. A few years ago, there's a nuclear plant in Nebraska, in Omaha, that came very close to getting flooded out, Fukushima style. Very close. And who's to say that won't happen in the next few years? There's the nuclear plant near Phoenix, which has near no major body of water. That one's that's crazy to me.
That's crazy.
So, all the Colorado River is drying up. The water sources for the city of Phoenix, they cool the plant with wastewater from Phoenix. So, if you have the water sources for the city of Phoenix drying up, and then you have the end source, the end water source eventually drying up to cool this nuclear plant. How do you think that's going to go? It's madness. It's
It
madness.
very much is. It very much is. So it's right back. We're all selfish. So in the end, we have to choose between electricity, basically, and clean water.
Yeah.
Is really what this boils down to. And I know no one wants to say that, but it's true.
Right. And the other end point, I see a lot of people, bringing up, fusion energy, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that are not actually operational at the moment.
No,
So,
and even our
there-
blessed Simeon doesn't agree with pursuing fusion.
No,
That's
and I've read articles on fusion energy, and it's the pressures and the heat and the amount of energy that they can't contain fusion energy necessarily. I mean, it's wild. If something goes wrong at a fusion plant, you're unleashing just incredible amounts of energy. It's so there's that, and then there's the fact that look, we can find all the magic energy sources we want, but if we continue to use these sources to destroy for human civilization to grow beyond our bounds and destroy the planet, then it doesn't really matter, right? These energy sources are just, the problem isn't fossil fuels. The problem is that fossil fuels have enabled 8 billion people to consume all the things that all the resources of the planet. That's the
exactly
problem.
right. We're doing the exact same things we were doing in Egypt. It's just now we've got fossil fuels to do it.
Right. Or Rome or wherever. So,
Wherever,
you change energy sources but carry on with the same activities. That's same result. No different. The result is no different.
So the overall truth is for every little bit of degradation we do to the complexity of life, we reduce the efficiency layer of thermodynamics, the really fine control, the fine tuning of how it all blends together from incoming solar energy and upwelling geothermal energy, because Earth has a temperature too. And if you assault either of those realms, you're going to create a feedback loop. And if we did the stuff we did as rock throwers and stick wielders, that's damage that we did does not show up globally in any real magnitude, not for a very long time. But things we do now is recursive.
Right. I actually, there was I don't know what happened to Jin Pai Gamma, was a watcher of the channel for many years, but he said this basically the same thing. It's like it's the imbalance of the heat, the heat, I guess, the energy balance of the planet, how we've moved so much material from inside the planet, outside the planet, right? And we've just moved things around enough to just create the imbalance, whether it's material, right? Just the raw material of the planet, or shifting the heat, heat sources and or balance of the planet. We've done a lot when we are, more powerful than we think.
You did the show describing the article on 100 billion tons per year,
right? Yes,
of materials moved.
Yep. And
yes.
And how the amount of materials that we have created on the planet is just mind-boggling. Frida Animals in the Rockfin chat says, "How useful will energy be when the soil has turned into dirt and we cannot grow any food?"
Exactly. And the reason all those materials are where they are is because of the processes of gravity and motion that push them there by density, and inertial progression. And if you change that, the surface of the Earth responds by becoming less providing for life. It has to put the materials back where it came from, because you've got huge planetary forces making it go back. That's why Venus has so much pressure and is layered the way it is. And we're basically forcing our atmosphere into a Venus state artificially by using fossil fuels to support the materials being where they are, rather than where the forces of gravity and motion of orbital mechanics wants them to go. That's basically what we're doing.
That's interesting. Oh man, we can go down another rabbit hole. Like the amount of energy it takes to just sustain things. Like, right? There's a when you stop, when you stop sustaining or maintaining anything, right? A building, a freeway, a parking lot, anything, right? How quickly it starts to decay and decompose and return to its natural state, right?
Exactly.
It takes an incredible amount of energy to maintain things as they are, like not just to build them, to maintain them. And usually that maintenance involves building more things, right?
And hauling more material.
It's freeways are a great example because it's I live in Los Angeles, right? So freeways they're everywhere and you need them and you're on them all the time. But it's hilarious to me because they spend all this money and all this time like repaving a freeway or remaking a freeway, and within like not long of a time, 5 years, maybe 10 years, that freeway is trash. I mean, the road is absolutely fucking undrivable, right? And then they're like, well, we got to do it again because the forces that are pummeling the freeway all the time with the cars and the trucks and the cars and the trucks and the cars and the trucks, right? Just 24 hours a day. Right. It's just massive amounts of energy, right? So, and then we spend massive amounts of energy to repave this freeway, and it's just like, oh my God, like just stop.
Well, this is a great discussion for flat earthers, because one of the arguments you can use against the flat earthers is the highway systems throughout the world. They're graded to be basically level, not just for the cars, but for the material to be stable. It requires that grading. And the earth is a constant curvature, so it's constantly working against you. And the engineers that make the roads know all about that.
Right. Sure. That's another road to go down. But I also, the funniest thing about the flat earth thing is I'm just like, nobody's been to the edge. I don't know. It goes back to the original idea of a flat earth, which was that if you keep going, you're going to hit the edge. I'm just like,
or fall off.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hilarious to me. Even though there are interesting concepts in the flat earth concept, I've watched a few videos on flat earth and I've been like, all right, sure. Those are interesting points you make there.
Some of them are fairly well thought out.
Some of them are thought out, but again, it's like nuclear power, you can gather enough data and evidence to support any case for anything, right? If you really go for it,
Statistical analysis is malleable to the person making the analysis. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey man, I got to let you go because I got like 5 minutes to cover the actual story that I made this video about. So, all right, take it easy.
Good talking.
Yeah.
You too.
All right. Last thing, I wanted to play this video. Poppy sent me this, but it's been gaining a lot of traction on because this guy was on Joe Rogan talking about the slave labor that is basically inside of everybody's phone. There's no avoiding it. And there's a slavery footprint basically in almost all the things we use. And I don't know what to say about it other than the things I've already said, and that most of the reaction to this is a shrug of the like, oh, what are you going to do? I don't know. Again, are we going to be weak humans enjoying our comfortable lives, or are we going to do something about this? What say you? Anyways, Joe Rogan podcast guest explains heart-wrenching source of electric vehicle iPhone batteries and viral video. Not to mention that our iPhones are all made. Yes, I have an iPhone. Are all made by, in horrific conditions in China. Anyways, Harvard visiting professor and modern slavery activist exposed the appalling cobalt mining industry in the Congo on a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience that went viral. The video has already racked up over 1 million views and counting. So are we going to do something about this? Are we going to change something about this? Siddharth Kara, author of Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives, told podcast host Joe Rogan that there's no such thing as clean cobalt. And we're going to listen to this video from him. It's a 9-minute video, but we're going to get through a little bit of it.
And we're looking at a video now. Jamie, what is this? The mines? Is this video?
So I think so.
This is so crazy to see. This is the bottom of the supply chain of your iPhone, of your Tesla, of your Samsung. I mean, I'm just naming those companies.
Right.
It's all of them, right? All of them. We're not just picking on them. And here's what you need to know, Joe, about this video. I was the first outsider to get into this mine. And that's why it's just a really short video that I was able to take. This is an industrial cobalt mine where there's not supposed to be one artisanal miner. Now, that's the term used for people who are just digging by hand as opposed to tractors and excavators. There's not supposed to be one here. That's what the story is told at the top of the chain. This mine, and I can name it, it's called Shabara. There's not supposed to be one artisanal miner here, according to the consumer-facing tech companies and EV companies buying this cobalt. Lo and behold, I walk into this place, and this is what I see. There's more than 15,000 human beings crammed into that pit, digging by hand. And if you have sound, you hear the mallets, you hear the shouting, you hear the grunts. It's a massive humanity. You might expect to see a scene like this.
So there's a term that gets used, clean cobalt.
There's no clean cobalt.
It's not real.
No. It's all marketing. It's all PR. It's a fiction. Just like that place. There's not supposed to be any artisanal mining there. It's all done industrially. That's the story told at the top of the chain. And people assume, the marketing teams at big tech and EV companies assume, well, who's going to go down there and actually walk into the place and grab a video that shows, no, it's actually all raw human force that is clanking that cobalt out of the ground. So there's no clean cobalt. There's not a single company on planet Earth that makes a device that has a rechargeable battery in it that can reliably and justifiably claim that their cobalt isn't coming from sources like that. And that's the truth that needs to get out there. That's the truth people need to understand. Because this is a story that goes back generations. There's these fictions told at the top of the chain about what conditions are like at the bottom. And truth seekers have to go find that truth and enlighten civilization so that people get agitated about it and want to do something about it. So there's no clean cobalt. Let's just make that totally abundantly clear. And anyone that claims otherwise is either peddling in falsehoods or is recklessly ignorant of the truth.
Are there any industrialized cobalt mines that use machinery and don't use slavery and don't use child labor and don't use these people that live in unimaginable poverty?
I've never seen one. And I've been to almost all the major industrial cobalt mines. Here's why I say that. Number one, they all or almost all will have scenes like that on them. Thousands of individuals clanking away for $1 or $2 a day. Okay? They don't have safety equipment. All that stuff, that cobalt's toxic to breathe. They're breathing it in all day.
No masks.
No masks.
No filtration
no
systems.
gloves. No. Half those guys are in flip-flops. All right? So almost all the industrial mines will have scenes like that. So that's number one. They'll say there are no artisanal miners there. No children there. And if you zoom in, you'll see that amongst that sea of humanity, there are thousands of kids. Teenage boys, in this case, because that requires a certain amount of force to clank away in that pit. Number two, there are hundreds of other artisanal mining sites scattered in the mining provinces. outside of industrial mines. There are artisanal miners in the industrial mines, and then just on the other side of the fence, there'll be a sea of humanity digging there as well, because it's not like at the fence the ore body stops. There's copper, cobalt, other things outside as well. So there'll be hundreds of sites where there are hundreds of thousands of people across the mining provinces digging. All that production is sold right back to the industrial mining companies. So it enters their supply chain as well. And then so they take what they extract with industrial equipment, artisanal miners inside the mine, artisanal miners including children outside the mine. It all gets dumped together into the same batch of acids to process and then flows up the chain. And again, no one can reasonably claim that their cobalt, even if they say that industrial mine, totally clean, don't believe what Siddharth is saying, that's a made up fake video. They can't demonstrate reliably that all the other cobalt being dug up by kids in thousands of sites across the mining provinces isn't also flowing into their supply chain.
Is there another source of cobalt in the world that's ethically supplied?
So, last year, 2021 is the last year there's data, about 72%, almost 3/4 of the world's supply of cobalt came out of a small patch of the Congo. And then there's like 3% Russia, 3% Australia, 3% Morocco. You know, there's everyone else is 3%. And I don't know what the conditions are there. I imagine in Australia, mining follows standards of dignity and decency and labor and sustainability and so on. But there's not enough cobalt outside of the Congo to meet demand. And demand projections are 400, 500, 600% increase in cobalt demand in the next decade or two, primarily being driven by adoption of electric vehicles. Each battery pack in an EV requires up to 10 kilograms of refined cobalt. That's 1,000 times what's required for a smartphone. So huge demand as the world transitions from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles, which is a net good thing, except for the people in the Congo. So there's not enough other cobalt out there. Even if all the non-Congo cobalt was perfectly sourced, there's not enough other cobalt out there to meet demand.
These companies that we talked about that use all this stuff, whether it's electric vehicle companies or cell phone manufacturers, obviously they're aware of this.
Yes, no question. They have to be.
Have they made any attempts to mitigate this in any way?
The truth, Joe, is no, not sufficient efforts. Most of what is done is PR statements, marketing. All these companies will say we have zero tolerance policies on child labor. We ensure standards of dignity and human rights for every member of our supply chain, down to the mining level. They'll all say this, down to the mining level. And they say it. And they may throw some money at the odd NGO or coalition or alliance that's meant to be working on these things. Nothing's actually happening on the ground. And that's what my book will demonstrate. You know, as I take the reader on the journey from place to place, mine to mine. There's this fiction that exists outside of the Congo of what companies are doing and what the conditions are like. And then there's the reality. Underneath those layers of obfuscation, there's the reality. There's the truth on the ground. And not one company, not one business alliance, not one entity up the chain is doing remotely enough to ensure that the dignity and human rights of the people of the Congo, not to mention the environment, because all the mining companies are just polluting and clear-cutting forests to build and expand mines. They're not doing nearly enough to respect the people and earth of the Congo, while we outside enjoy our, renewable, gadget-driven lifestyles.
And that's the reality of the capitalist system that we live in. Just liberally apply that to pretty much everything else. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I think I'll see you tomorrow, but it may not be at the regular time. So stay tuned. Tomorrow might be a little bit like, it's Christmas Day. I don't know. I may pass on the show. I may do the show. It may not be at the regular time. So if I don't see you tomorrow, I definitely will see you Monday at the regular time. So please support the channel if you can. Buymeacoffee.com. Black Bear News. And all the other ways that are available to you. I appreciate it. All right. Thanks, guys. Till next time. Peace.